I can still hear the applause echoing in the auditorium as I sit alone in the back row, the black cap still pinned to my head, tassel brushing against my cheek. Around me, clusters of graduates are laughing, hugging, posing for family photos. A few feet away, a mom holds a bouquet of roses bigger than her daughter's head. Another girl is crying into her father's chest, happy tears.
Me?
My row of chairs is empty. Nobody from my family came to my graduation. Not my husband, not my kids, not my mother or my sisters. The 4 seats I reserved, front row, center, stayed vacant the entire ceremony, staring back at me like a cruel joke. I smoothed the front of my navy blue dress, feeling the silky fabric beneath my fingers, as if touching it will remind me this is real. I did this. After years of night classes, study groups, and silent tears in my car, I earned this degree. My phone buzzes in my purse. For a second, hope flares. Maybe a text saying they're on their way, maybe an apology. But when I unlock it, my stomach drops. They're at a barbecue. A smiling group photo fills my screen. My husband at the grill, my kids running in the background, my sisters laughing with paper plates in their hands. The caption reads, "Family first." I almost laugh at the irony. The sound catches in my throat, halfway between a sob and a bitter chuckle. Today was supposed to be my day. I wasn't always this composed. 3 years ago, the night I told them I wanted to go back to school, my hands were shaking so badly, I nearly dropped the plate I was drying. We were sitting at the kitchen table, my husband, Mark, scrolling on his phone, my sisters visiting with their kids, my mother perched like a queen at the head of the table. I applied for a business program, I said, my voice too soft, almost swallowed by the clatter of dishes. Part-time. Nights and weekends. Mark didn't even look up. For what? You already have a job. I know. But I want to finish my degree. I said, louder this time. It's something I've always wanted. My sister, Kelly, smirked. You're 40, Emma. Who's going to hire you when you're done? You think you'll be some big CEO? Laughter rippled across the table. Even my mother smiled into her iced tea. It's not about being a CEO, I said, my throat tight. It's about proving to myself I can finish what I started. Mark finally looked up, frowning. Who's going to take care of the kids when you're sitting in some classroom? You can't just run off chasing dreams. This family needs you here. I felt the sting of his words like a slap. My fingers curled into fists under the table. After everyone left, I went to my room and cried into a pillow until my chest ached. That's when my neighbor, Mrs. Turner, 80 years old, wise as a saint, knocked on my door. She had heard the argument through the thin walls. She handed me a small, leather-bound notebook. Write it down, she said simply. All of it. Every insult, every doubt, every dream. Then go do it anyway. That night, I made my decision. The next morning, while Mark was still asleep, I clicked Confirm Enrollment on the program's website. The confirmation email felt like a lifeline, a secret spark of hope glowing in my chest. I didn't tell anyone. Not Mark. Not my mother. Not my sisters. I decided if no one was going to believe in me, I would believe in myself. And so began the loneliest, hardest, most transformative chapter of my life. The first semester nearly broke me. I worked full-time at the dental clinic, came home to cook dinner, help my kids with their homework, then opened my own laptop when the house was finally quiet. Some nights, I studied at the kitchen table until dawn, my head nodding over textbooks while the coffee went cold. There were moments I wanted to quit, like the night I got a 72 on my first economics quiz. I sat in my car outside the library, rain hammering the windshield, tears streaking my cheeks. Maybe they were right, I whispered to no one. Maybe this is impossible. But then I pulled out Mrs. Turner's little leather notebook from my bag. I flipped to the page where I had written down Kelly's words, "You're 40. Who's going to hire you?" I underlined it twice, hard enough to almost tear the paper. Then I wrote underneath, "Me. I'm going to hire me." And I kept going. I started making flashcards, recording lectures to play while folding laundry, even sticking formulas to the bathroom mirror so I could memorize them while brushing my teeth. When I got my first A, I didn't tell anyone at home. Instead, I bought myself a small vanilla latte and sat in my car, grinning like a fool as I sipped it in silence. Over time, I built a quiet network of support. My classmate Jenna became my study partner, a single mom who understood what it meant to juggle everything. Professor Hayes, an older woman with silver hair and sharp glasses, took me under her wing. "You have a good mind for business," she told me after class one day. "Don't let anyone make you small." Her words lit something in me. By my second year, I was doing more than just passing classes. I was excelling. I entered a business pitch competition, secretly of course, and won second place, earning a small grant that helped pay for my final semester. At home, Mark barely noticed my late nights. "Working late?" he'd ask absently, eyes still glued to the TV. "Yeah," I'd say. And it wasn't a lie. I was working, just not on the life he thought I should be living. I kept my victories quiet, hidden like pearls I strung together in secret. Each test, each paper, each project became another bead on that necklace. By the time graduation approached, I wasn't the same woman who had cried into her pillow that first night. I stood taller. I spoke with more confidence. I looked at my reflection and saw someone more. Someone my family didn't even know existed. After the ceremony, I didn't take pictures with classmates. I didn't join them for lunch or drinks. I walked to my car in silence, the afternoon sun glaring off my windshield, my gown swishing around my ankles like a heavy reminder. I sat behind the wheel and stared at my diploma on the passenger seat. It felt both like a trophy and a question. Was it worth it if no one I loved cared? My phone buzzed again, another photo from the barbecue. This one of Mark holding a beer, laughing. The caption read, "Perfect Saturday." I swallowed the lump in my throat. For a moment, I considered driving straight home, pretending the day never happened. But something inside me snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. I wasn't the woman they thought I was anymore. Instead of heading home, I drove across town to my favorite little cafe. The barista smiled when she saw me. "Graduation day?" she asked, eyeing the gown. "Yes," I said simply. "Double espresso, please." I sat at the corner table, removed my cap, and opened Mrs. Turner's notebook. On the very first page, the one with all the insults, the doubts, the laughter I had scribbled down 3 years ago, I added one last line. "They didn't come. Not even today." Then I flipped to a fresh page and wrote, "But I came for me." Something inside me lit up. I took a selfie right there, gown, diploma, espresso in hand, and posted it on Facebook with a caption that said, 3 years of hard work, late nights, and sacrifice. I did it. I'm officially a graduate. Today I celebrate myself. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't mention the empty seats. But within minutes, the comments started rolling in, friends, neighbors, even old classmates cheering me on. Then came the family group chat. "Kelly, wait, you graduated today? Mom, why didn't you tell us? Mark, Emma, where are you?" I stared at the screen, feeling a strange calm settle over me. For years, I had begged for their approval. Today, they were begging for an explanation. When I finally drove home that evening, they were waiting, Mark on the porch, my sisters and mother in the living room. "You should have told us," Mom said first, her voice tight. "I did tell you," I replied evenly. 3 years ago. You laughed." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Mark rubbed the back of his neck. "I didn't think you'd actually do it." "That's the thing," I said, setting my diploma on the coffee table. "None of you did. And that's okay. Because I didn't do this for you." I let the weight of my words hang in the air. For the first time, they were the ones squirming, not me. Looking around that room, I realized this was my moment, my reveal. They weren't looking at the tired housewife they used to know. They were looking at a woman who had rebuilt herself in secret. And now, it was time to decide. What came next? I stood there in the middle of the living room, cap still in my hand, gown draped over my arm. My family shifted uncomfortably on the couch, waiting for me to explain myself, as if I owed them an apology for becoming someone new. But I wasn't here to apologize. "I'm not angry," I said finally, my voice calm but firm. But I need you all to understand something. This degree is not just a piece of paper. It represents 3 years of my life. 3 years I spent fighting for myself when nobody else would. Kelly crossed her arms, defensive. We didn't mean to hurt you. Yes, you did. I interrupted softly. Maybe not on purpose. But every laugh, every comment, every time you told me I was being selfish, you made me feel small. And I let you. Mark looked at me, guilt flashing across his face. I didn't realize. I know you didn't, I said. But from this moment forward, things change. I walked over to the coffee table and tapped the diploma. This is my line in the sand. I will not shrink myself to make anyone more comfortable. Not anymore. They stayed quiet, letting my words sink in. I have conditions, I continued, surprising even myself with how steady my voice was. If you want to be part of my life, you respect my time. You respect my choices. No more dismissing my goals. No more belittling what matters to me. I turned to my sisters. You tell your daughters that their dreams matter, at any age, no matter what anyone says. You stop making jokes at my expense, and you start showing up. Finally, I looked at Mark. And you start being my partner, not my warden. You ask how you can support me, not how you can stop me. Mark swallowed hard. And if we don't? I met his gaze, without flinching. Then you'll still see me, at my next graduation, my next milestone, but you'll be sitting in the back row of my life, not the front. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the hum of the refrigerator. Then my mother nodded slowly. You're right, she said, her voice surprisingly soft. We failed you. But maybe we can do better. It wasn't a grand apology, but it was a start. I exhaled, feeling something inside me loosen for the first time in years. The power had shifted, and this time, it wasn't leaving my hands. The days that followed felt different, lighter somehow. Mark started asking questions he'd never asked before. How was class? What's next for you? One evening, he even surprised me with a bottle of wine and said, for the graduate. It was awkward, clumsy, but it was something. Kelly texted me the next weekend with a photo of her daughter holding a book report. She says she wants to be a writer. I told her she can be anything she wants. Even Mom called, just to say she was proud. They were small steps, but they mattered. One quiet morning, after the house had emptied for the day, I sat at the kitchen table with Mrs. Turner's notebook. The pages were worn now, filled with my handwriting, my pain, my anger, my hopes. On the very last page I wrote, I graduated from school, and from needing permission to live my life. I closed the notebook and placed it in the drawer, right next to my diploma. Then I made myself a cup of coffee, stood in front of the mirror, and really looked at the woman staring back at me. She wasn't the Emma who cried into her pillow that night 3 years ago. She wasn't the Emma who begged to be taken seriously. She was a woman who had walked across that stage alone and discovered that she was enough. Later that evening, as the sun set, I sat on the porch, listening to the faint laughter of my kids playing in the yard. The world looked softer, like it had shifted just slightly in my favor. And when Mark came out to sit beside me, I didn't feel small or silenced. I felt whole. Because for the first time in my life, I knew that no matter who showed up for me, I would always show up for myself. I smiled to myself, almost whispering, like a final line in a movie voiceover. Today, I didn't just graduate from school, I graduated from needing their approval. And somehow, that felt like the real victory.